Ladies and gentlemen, boils and ghouls, it's the Scare Factor Podcast, Season 2. My name is Bryan. I am of Team Skelegore in Central New York. I am joined this week by Tiffany of Team Terror Techies in Seattle, Washington. Tiffany, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. So it's just us this week.
Yes.
So that's fun. This week we're talking about types of scares, some fun scare actor stories that we have because both Tiffany and I have worked in haunts, and so we've seen both sides of this, both as patrons of haunted houses and as employees of haunts. So we have some unique insight here that I think we can share on these different types of things.
So, Bryan, how long have you worked at a haunted house? Even though that sounds really scripted.
And to be fair, that is totally not scripted. That's the first time I'm hearing the question. So I worked at a haunt for 3 years. That was with Frightmare Farms in Palermo, New York. I'm still friends with a handful of people that work there. I'm still friendly with the management. I'm going to be reviewing them this year, so that's fun.
Nice.
How long did you work for a haunt?
So I've been working for haunts for over 20 years, and I've worked at 5 different haunts because I've moved across country.
So you definitely have the experience here.
A bit, but like each haunt that I worked at was like slightly different. Yeah, I meant there are different types like outdoor and indoor and multi-haunts and singular haunts. So I think all 5 of them were pretty distinctly different. Probably the first and the last one was the closest overlapping. But yeah, I've been to a lot of haunts and I've been acting for a really long time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've done some acting, in small projects outside of haunts, but nothing really horror driven. Just kind of friends who are shooting a short film or something, and they needed me to play a small part, that sort of thing. But
Yep.
it's all good. It's all theater anyway.
Right.
So types of scares. Now there's a lot of different types of scares, and we're going to do our best to kind of generalize what they are because I'm sure anybody listening can think of some really specific scare that they saw that they've never seen anywhere else, but it kind of fits into a generalized sort of umbrella for some different types here. And I think the most common type of scare that you're going to see in a haunt is going to be a jump scare. So, like a jump scare is you walk into a scene and whether you see the actor or not, the scare comes when they either make a sudden movement or they make a noise or they do something that is very sudden and unexpected and it makes you jump. That's kind of why it's called a jump scare.
Yeah, we always kind of like commented how a jump scare would be, it makes the patron jump, but it also makes like your action that you're doing is kind of like you jump out of the room, you jump out of a box, you basically pop in and pop out. Um, yeah, it's a very, very common type of scare. Some haunts just like really rely on only jump scares. Um, but I don't know. Would you call like a chainsaw can be a jump scare?
I think if it was set up correctly, it could be, right? So I don't know, I guess if you walked into a scene and you didn't see anybody else in there, and then all of a sudden the sound of a chainsaw,
Right.
I guess that could kind of fall under a sort of jump scare because, the sudden sound, an otherwise quiet area could make you jump. Sure, it could come as a startle.
So we actually saw a strange one last year where uh we went by this window and we had the chainsaw come out of the window. Just that was a full-on jump scare with a chainsaw, which was it was weird because obviously the actor couldn't chase us, but we weren't expecting a chainsaw to come out of a window. So I think that's one of a
It
group.
was it just the chainsaw?
No, it was chainsaw plus actor.
Oh.
Yeah, it was kind of like a pop scare.
That's oh okay.
Yep.
All right. That's yeah, so like so definitely some jump scares can be, kind of big like that. I think if you asked anybody who's ever been through a haunted attraction, hey, what's an example of a jump scare? They could think of 100 different times they've been in a haunt and an actor comes out of the dark just from nowhere. And that seems to be the most typical, I think.
Yeah, I kind of want to say like a jump scare is definitely up there, like for actor perspective of like one of the more dangerous scares for that reason. That's the one that you're most likely to get hit or injured. I kind of remember like early on at my third haunted house, I was in like a pop-out window and being in a pop-out and doing jump scares like that way, opening up the shutters and then hiding back in. Um, yeah, that was kind of a favorite thing for people is to kind of think that I was a prop and then punch at me. But it's definitely one of the most like aerobic type of scares. There's other kinds, but that was definitely the
Yeah.
one I think took the
Yeah,
most
yeah,
on
for
straight.
sure. For sure, yeah. If you're doing a specific movement over and over, it can become quite the gym routine. Um,
It's like
yeah,
CrossFit,
and it's like even if you were an animatronic, even if that was a prop scare, why do people think it's okay to swing at anything inside of a haunt?
oh goodness, I have no idea. Like,
Like, if you know that that's your response to being scared, why are you there?
yeah,
Like, you paid money for this.
right. Yeah, no, I really honestly don't have any answer or philosophy or even like a theory of it because I agree. Like, that was something that we always kind of asked, um, like ourselves, like whenever I was acting or even like coaching actors, it was just kind of why? Like, why would you pay to get scared and then we scare you and then you like attack one of our actors or you punch at them or plethora of other things.
Yeah, and I've seen videos on the internet. There was one that was going around last year of this kid. I don't know, he must have been in college or something, younger guy, and he's in a haunted house, and I think it was an animatronic that kind of, it popped up or something, whatever the case was, and it took him by surprise, as intended. And oh man, he took a swing at this thing, and I think he broke it, if I remember correctly. And it just like I don't understand. Like, do you think you're cool for doing that? Do you think like people are gonna think highly of you? I'm sure your parents must be really proud of you.
Right.
Um, I don't know. I don't get it. Like why would you pay money to go into a place where the intent is to startle you or otherwise scare you, and then you're going to take a swing at anything that accomplishes that, and then you run the risk of getting thrown out, getting arrested, getting a ticket, whatever the case may be, like any sort of punishment that comes after that. Like, why?
Right. Yep. I mean, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to add to that.
Yeah, it's just like it is the weirdest thing to me.
Right.
But on the other side of that too, it's like I've been to a few haunts as a reviewer, and we've all seen it. We've seen it, working in haunts and going to haunts. You see a group of girls and they're being followed by dad, who clearly is not amused because he's been dragged into this because they're all scared or whatever the case is. And like dad just isn't getting any of the entertainment that he paid for.
Right.
None of the scares are directed at him. Nobody's paying any attention to him. It's like, yeah, he's not really there because he wants to be there, but the guy paid the same amount as anybody else to go inside. So like, why is he not getting what he paid for? And that's happened to me personally. I was on a hayride last year, and it was a big wagon. So understandably, not everybody's going to get a scare every scene, which that's a whole nother thing. But uh, I noticed that where I happen to be sitting, not very far from me was a group of, I don't know, 14, 15-year-old girls who were screaming at everything, a twig brushes against their leg and they're freaking out. And so, of course, all of the scares are being directed at them because, yeah, low hanging fruit, I'm guilty of it too. But look, as far as these actors know, I paid the same amount of money as anybody else on this wagon. Why am I not getting any attention here whatsoever? And I think part of it is because I'm being viewed as like this boyfriend who got dragged along or dad who got dragged along.
Yeah, so I actually saw a really cool one. Like, hay rides are not my favorite attraction. I feel bad saying that, but they're not because of the same thing. It's like you're with a group. It's hard to scare a group. There's this like sense of like, oh, these people are not really able to get that close to you. Um, so there's like a lot of reasons that hayride attractions don't do it to me. But what was interesting, and again, the one that I visited last year, they had plexiglass up on the like actual like hayride. And so you had constantly actors coming in and banging on the plexiglass. And so, but they came out of nowhere. Like you can't see. And so they
Okay,
were like
I
true
like
pop
that. Yeah.
out scares, which is not too common on a hayride because you normally could see them down the way, but they would pop out of whatever and they would be pretty close to the trailer where you can't see, and then all of a sudden they would pop up and pop pop the plexiglass. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I like that because it solves the problem of the hayride, right? Is because you can't get the typical
Right.
sort of scares that you can get in walkthrough attractions. It just without stopping the train or the wagon, and then it's like, okay, so an actor's going to get
Right.
on, and it, I don't know, it takes me out of it just so quickly. So having that, I think that solves one of the fundamental problems of hayrides.
Yeah. Um, Also, like since we're talking about hay rides, how about what do you think about the narrator on hay
So
rides? That type of
yeah,
it's not really a scare, but it's definitely a actor character that you run into.
yeah, and I think almost every hayride I've ever been on, there has been at least a narrator of some sort, right? So I've been on some where you have a narrator and it's very clear that's what they do, and they stand at the front of the wagon and they tell you like, oh, we're coming into the cemetery, better hope that nothing comes out of the graves. But like, of course it will, because why else would I have paid money to be here?
Right.
I'm gonna be disappointed if nothing comes out of those graves. Or here we go into the dragon's den. Oh, where's the caretaker? Oh no, Fluffy ate the caretaker. Not again.
So have you
You know,
ever had the one where you're sitting and the trailer or the hayride like stalls on a train track or with a vehicle or a semi and it comes out on a zip line?
I've I've never seen that particular. I don't. I hesitate to call that a scare, although it totally is.
It is.
I've never seen that particular effect.
Oh, yeah. The two hay rides, again, I don't go on hay rides that often, so it's really hard for me to say of like, oh, it's a typical thing. Both of them use a version of that scare. I think one was like a car or a semi because the headlights were really high, and then all of a sudden you seen a lot of lights coming at you. And then the other one was definitely a train with the train whistle coming up at you. So you have the noise, you have the lights. Um, but I think like that one was the most like impressive.
Yeah, and I think that effect, that also solves one of the fundamental problems of hayrides, right? Because how do you scare a group of, let's say, 15 or 20 people for your, typical wagon size? How do you scare them all at the same time,
Yeah,
right? Because you have different eye lines. You can't really direct where people are looking because you're on a wagon and there's things happening all around you. People are looking all over the place. So how do you direct their attention where you want it to be directed? is one of the problems that you're going to grapple with if you have a hayride. So that solves that problem right there. We're going to make a lot of noise and make people look at this thing.
Right.
And not only that, but like it's not your typical, you know, you know, ghosts and ghouls kind of scare. That's a very real thing that people are afraid of.
Yeah, I think again, because I thought it would have been more typical or more common, because it's a pretty simple effect, air quote simple. Um, like I know the train one literally is just a really bright light with like the train horn and it's on a zip line. Um, to me that would be a really easy setup, right? But
Right.
the semi one was slightly more impressive, but I'm pretty sure it was just like this rig, like you didn't actually see a front of a semi or anything like that because it didn't get that close. All you seen was a whole bunch of lights. So, yeah, I thought both of them were cool, but like I also assumed until now that it was like hayride canon to like see those.
Yeah, I would think that that would be a more common thing, though I've never seen it.
Yeah, that's
At
weird.
least not that I can think of. I have seen, or I know of that effect being used in a walkthrough attraction. I think it's in Canada, actually. So just on the other side of Lake Ontario, there's a haunt, and you've probably seen the pictures on Facebook. All the people who are like totally freaked out on haunted house, and the effect. Spoilers, plug your ears if you're going to go to this place and you don't know what it is. So the effect is you walk into the scene and you're told to wait there, and you see headlights, so bright lights across the room from you, and then all of a sudden they start shooting towards you, and there's a horn blowing. The idea is a car is going to crash into you or a truck or something, and there's a camera attached to the rig that's speeding towards you, and it takes your picture when it gets to the end.
Right.
Um, so that's I know of the effect, and I do know of the one place that does it, but I've never personally experienced it.
I have, but now you're going to ask me where, and I honestly don't remember where. It's been a couple years since I seen it, but I definitely been to like that haunt that takes a photo when a semi is coming at you, and it
Yeah.
really does work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because again, it's a very real fear that, people could reasonably have. It's not like, okay, Nora's afraid of spiders. Okay, I think everybody, for the most part, is kind of like, ew, spiders. But nobody is irrationally afraid, running away, literally terrified because they saw a spider.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it before last season, is there's the clown phobia. And
Right.
playing a clown for many, many years, I have definitely seen people run away terrified of clowns. Facts.
Oh, sure, sure. I've played a clown once or twice, and people are. I think most people are like, I need to keep an eye on you because I don't trust you.
Right?
You know.
It's like, I'm the nice one. I'm the nice clown.
To be fair, that was around the time when like people were dressing up as clowns and then killing people. You remember that whole
Yeah.
thing? So yeah, it was right around that time. So like, and it was right when It Chapter 2 was coming out in theaters. So people were a little bit on edge when somebody was dressed up as a clown.
Right. So we're kind of flirting with two other like famous types of scares. I think we'll continue on with the clowns. So one scare that it kind of reminds me of is the mannequin scare. So you have a
Okay.
clown, you have all these mannequins dressed up like clowns, except there's one real actual clown or person in a clown mask in this room.
Yep. And I think that's going to be the most common setup that most people will see this type of scare. It could also be done in a room full of just plain old mannequins, and you have an actor blended amongst them. If for any of our returning listeners, everybody knows I hate mannequins. Yes, they freak me out. No, I won't go with you to, mannequin horror, whatever haunted house and
Is that a haunted house that you absolutely are phobic of?
It
Mannequin horror?
it's and I don't even think that I'm phobic of it in the sense of having a phobia. At least not in the clinical sense. Um, it's definitely one of those things where I'll hesitate walking into the scene when I can. Once I see what's in there, I'm gonna hesitate, and I'm gonna be really on edge. And I'm all I'm trying to do in that scene is trying to go to my happy place.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. One of them, so I've acted in mannequin scares. There was like two different ones that I did. So one, I was in this like kind of medical thing, and as an actor, you act like a prop. And it's the whole like instance when people go past you of like, is that thing real? And they're trying to decipher if you're a prop or not. And then all of a sudden it kind of turns into like a jump scare, or like I jumped down off of the operating table and chased after them. Um, so that was like a type of a mannequin scare. Like I've actually similar to like the pop out, I've had people like touch me to see if I was real. That was always really kind of strange for me. Because again, it doesn't really make sense of why people do what they do, but they do.
Yeah.
So the other type kind of goes back to what we were talking about, where the room was set up and there's sheets, so mannequins under sheets, very simple. And there were two actors in that room that were actual actors. And so when you kind of went past, or as people went past, the people who were actually actors would like loom and follow and kind of play this like um what do you call it? Green light, red light situation.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So when you're looking at them, they're not moving. Kind of an
Yeah.
SCP-173 sort of deal.
Yeah. And so it was fun, and like people that went through got creeped out about it, or at least it would be something that they would really, really talk about and be very like, again, very aware, and it's that stuck in people's head. That's kind of like the purpose of scares, is be like, oh, there's that one room and that ghost just kept following me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of my own personal hell right there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's not even like the creep factor, of the like, oh, you're gonna follow me. Like, I know you're gonna follow me. Like, I walk in, I see, all of these mannequins with sheets over their heads. Like, there's at least one actor among these, and it's gonna follow me. And whatever, let's just get this shit done and over with.
Right. Yeah, I would say it's a pretty popular one. Obviously, it's not a jump scare, but it's a really easy setup, doesn't require much, as in like environment, could be very elaborate costume, but it's a pretty, like I said, ours was just sheets, so that's
Yeah,
not really an
it's
elaborate
definitely,
costume.
but it's definitely effective, right?
Yeah.
Because like it's I think, too many owners, managers, directors, whatever you want to call them, of haunted houses think that everything has to be super high action packed all of the time. And if there's a scene that just isn't, you know, uh, you know, absolutely climactic in its scare factor, that, it's not a good scene. And that just isn't the case. Some of the best haunts that I have seen or that I know about have a gradual buildup of just creepy shit that happens in every scene, and then you get some really big, huge scares that really send people over the edge.
So there's this kind of like, I think it's a philosophy that you would call it, scareology. It's something that I heard used before, but essentially, in designing a haunt and your scares and planning out your scares, it's kind of like a story. So you have like first conflict, you have the second conflict, there's some type of like resolution and lull, but it's not the final resolution. Then you have this like major conflict, and then you could have like a slow, gradual, like cool down type of thing, or you could just have it end at the major conflict, and all of a sudden you're out of this room. Um, but I've seen like both of them. I've seen like haunts that are like constantly high energy in your face, people coming out anywhere, constant jump scare, jump scare, jump scare. And
Yeah, and it
then,
gets old real quick.
yeah. And then I've seen it before where they definitely do like plan lulls. So, for example, a mannequin scare, after you had this like assault of senses where, actors were coming out of everywhere and following you and doing other types of scares that we're going to cover pretty soon.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing, so the mannequin scare, it kind of starts out like a Jack and Jill sort of scare, which is a different type of scare. So Jack and Jill starts out usually as, I guess the most common method that you'll see this executed is you have one actor who is your distractor, and that's Jill, right? So she's distracting you. Maybe she's talking to you or she's doing something. She's getting your attention somewhere else other than where Jack is. And when your attention is completely away from Jack, guess who comes running up behind you to give you the shock of your life? And so that's the basic setup of that. A lot of times it kind of plays out like that, where you have somebody who's talking to you, and then the scare comes in from the side, and it's kind of like an ambush. Um, Other times it can work out like a mannequin sort of scare, where like you walk into a room and your attention is not focused completely on the actors, right? You may know that there is an actor in there somewhere, but you don't know where, number one. And number two, you can't put your attention completely on that actor because, well, there could be more, right?
Right. So, um, I've actually only seen like Jack and Jill scares. I guess I've seen it with like two actors. Most commonly, I've seen it mostly like actor and a prop or animatronic, to kind of hit back on animatronics. So normally the animatronic is what is the distracting thing and pulling your attention somewhere, and then all of a sudden like an actor comes out. I've seen it a lot with like chainsaws, um, where you could even use like two chainsaw people, but you hear the chainsaw somewhere else, so you're like, oh yeah, I know somebody is going to come to my left, and then all of a sudden somebody comes up right behind you. Um, I don't really know that many of, again, I don't really know that many of like actor, and so as a story, as an actor, again, I don't have a lot of that. I have a lot of animatronics. So one of the places that I've worked, there was this like really loud slammer animatronic. So slammer is the whole like loud noise against metal. And basically I did a mannequin scare. Like I pretended that I was something else, or it's just one of the scene, or I was a mannequin, right? But people just passed me and didn't pay attention to me. And then I would just like pop out of nowhere and follow them through. This one had like kind of like a hidey hole, so I could actually hide in the scene. So they took a corner, and there was an actor. I've heard it called a lot of things. An actor hut or a space, or basically it's just a corner of a room that is camouflaged to look like it's rounded, but in
Right. So
reality,
yeah, I've heard it called an actor box or
yeah,
something to that degree.
there's so many names for it. But same philosophy. That's what I would pop out of. So, um, but yeah, that's the Jack and Jill scare.
Yeah, and that's a really common one that I think most people have probably seen. Maybe they haven't realized it. But it's next time you go to a haunted house, watch out for one because you'll almost definitely see one. They're super common, right behind jump scares. And one of the things that maybe we kind of hinted at it is with the jump scares. Every single one of these can turn into a jump scare so easily. So with the distraction too, And, you can kind of work this into a Jack and Jill sort of scare is something that I've heard called a white rabbit scare. And so the way this works is you are walking down a hallway, and at the very end, you see an actor who goes scurrying across perpendicular to the direction you're walking. And it's somebody that you see kind of reoccurring over and over again. And you can never really quite get to them because they're always just out of reach, right? And it's like the white rabbit in Alice in Wonderland where she's chasing the white rabbit, which, yeah, let's not get into the fact that it's an allegory for drugs or whatever, but so it's, if you think about the movie Alice in Wonderland, she's chasing this white rabbit, she can never get the white rabbit, right? So that's kind of where this actor comes from. Now, I've never seen one, but I can think of a lot of situations where that could be used super effectively. I think it would be it's a good in building that creep sort of factor.
Right.
Tiff, have you ever seen one in person?
So I have, and I kind of been a part of them. I've seen them mostly in Q Line. So basically, you have this character on stilts. You have really like in your face, highly energetic Q Line actor that's is able to like pop in and pop out. So in an outdoor haunt, you would pop in and pop out of corn a lot. So they would kind of like disappear and appear again. Actually, last year as a patron, um, we had an actor that followed us through the queue line all the way through the haunted house and kept popping out, like using the actor pathways and just kept popping out in every room. And so it was just like, oh no, there's that person. They're following me again and again and again.
Yeah, it's they're kind of being their own Jack and Jill sort of scare.
Yeah, and it's weird. Not really so weird, because again, as an actor, when we did the Q line actor thing, it depends on the night and stuff, obviously. But if it was a slower night and the Q actor believed like they could like disappear into the house for a second, like we definitely had actors that went through and would go through all the actor pathways, right? Because that's kind of like a time warp into different areas of the haunt, but they would go through the actor pathways and just show up in scenes. Sometimes like it would be like a comedic character. Most of the time it would be like a creep scare that we would have, because it's not really to distract what the actors and the props were already doing in the scenes, because that could be a kind of off-putting if you have a white rabbit that just appears in a scene that you're not used to having a white rabbit in.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is like you kind of have to plan out where they're going to be. You have to make sure that your patrons are going to see the white rabbit too, because it's kind of a wasted effort in building the atmosphere if nobody ever sees it, right?
Right.
So if you're walking down a dark hallway and your actor is dressed in all black, well, is anybody going to see him? So it's the sort of thing where you have to plan that out, and that it's definitely one of the harder ones to accomplish effectively, I think.
It can. Again, it does go into like a Jack and Jill, but because of like the nature of them popping in and out, like I said, I've seen them mostly as Q line actors, and you're not expecting to have that actor in there. It's kind of like these one-off. Again, like you see them on slower nights. You see them. It could be on busy nights, but they mostly just stay in the Q line.
Yeah. So along with the White Rabbit, and the way that they kind of pop in and out, that works into illusions, which I could go for hours talking about illusions. Some of the more common ones that people may have seen are like the fog swamp. So you walk into an area, there's fog being pumped into the room, and there's a laser that's maybe at chest height or waist height, and it creates this idea that you're wading through a swamp. And there might be actors who are hiding underneath the light, the level of the laser, and then they jump up at certain times. that can come at a risk because nobody can really see below that laser. And so you're, as an actor, you run the risk of getting kicked. I've seen people who, or I've heard of people who do that sort of scare, and then they get seriously injured because people are trying to run through there because they're scared, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, we've had it because of the fog. It gets kind of slick.
Yep.
The floor gets kind of slick. We've had that before, kind of adding to like the danger aspect. Not that I don't think it's particularly dangerous. But it can be. It definitely can be. The same way that we were talking about jump scares and, like popping out and patrons is like a risk in general if you're really close to them. Because there's nothing normally in these illusion scares between you and the patron. Like, it's normally in minimal prop rooms. There's nothing to hide behind because the cover of darkness you could hide behind. But a lot of your illusions are kind of like that. There's definitely some like prop or straight up like set designs that kind of do illusions that allow the actor to be safer.
Yeah. Yeah.
For example, like the ghost illusion.
Oh, Pepper's Ghost, yeah. Yeah, so you're, for anybody that doesn't know how this works, again, spoiler alert, Pepper's Ghost works based on mirrors, or in this case, panes of glass, and how light reflects against panes of glass that are at 45 degrees to one another. And so there's a few prerequisites. One, you need to have a very bright light on your actor. And two, you need to have panes of sheet glass. And so, no, it can't be plexiglass. It has to be glass. So those things alone can cause some problems. But the basic idea here is in a separate room, you have an actor who's doing their act, whatever it is they're going to do. The famous example of this is at Disney's Haunted Mansion, where you have the ghosts in the ballroom and they're dancing. And the way that works is they have animatronics there doing it. I think there's live actors sometimes, but so basically you have your characters, whether they be animatronics or people or whatever. They're dressed up in the costume, and they're dancing. And so bright lights are being shown on them, and the reflection of them dancing is being passed through two panes of glass at 45 degrees to one another. And so when you look into this room, what you're actually seeing is the reflection on the glass of the actors who are in a separate room. There's a whole diagram that goes with this that some people may have seen. If you're actually interested in this sort of thing, you've probably looked it up. You saw the diagram. You understand the basics of how this works. It's really, really cool when it's done correctly. That being said, a lot of times you get this bluish sort of color because of how white light reflects through glass, and you get that prism effect going through the glass. So you get this sort of bluish, purplish color. That helps in the whole, ghostly appearance sort of thing. But, if you want something a little more realistic, and fleshy, I guess, maybe not the best option there. I've seen some proposals from people who talk about like doing Pepper's Ghost in a telescoping hallway. So you do the infinite mirror trick in a hallway. The basic, plenty of people have seen the infinite mirror boxes, right? So you take a frame, you put a mirror in it, and you line it with lights, and then so you have a space between the lights and the mirror, and it looks like it goes on forever.
So I actually have a horrible story about a mirror that it was how it could go wrong.
Oh boy.
So infinite hallway, right? Just imagine this. Infinite hallway. We have an actor that's this intimidation type actor and has a crowbar.
Oh boy. I see where this is going.
Yeah, it's exactly what you think it is. Yeah, absolutely running full force towards the infinite hallway because he was chasing patrons, right? And the idea is to get the patrons to like kind of have hit the illusion, like plexiglass, a little bit like Roadrunner style thing going on. Um, but the thing was is that the actor was running full flat, full like down. The patrons were able to pick up just fine and just avoid it, right? They knew that they had to take the left turn to get out of the actual room. The actor, however, with his crowbar, went through the illusion
Oh boy.
into the back of the scene. And so we had to like close that room section for quite a while to be able to clean up everything, make sure the actor was all right. But yeah, that's the one experience that we had. And then the other one was same illusion, but it was flat, like on the ground. And this kind of goes to like patrons being gross and disgusting, but that one, people would like spit on the mirror and like throw stuff on it to like ruin the illusion. But we constantly had to have like an actor go through and clean it every hour or so. So that was interesting. Yeah, it was really hard to keep that illusion. It was cool if nobody like messed with it, but it was really hard to keep that thing clean and check on it all the time. And we almost had like a dedicated actor that was their job to just go through the haunt and clean that thing.
Why are
Yeah.
people just so awful?
Again, I have no answers.
Oh, my
People
God.
are not fun sometimes.
If you're listening to this and you're one of these people, just stop. Why?
Just don't be that
why are
person.
you such an asshole? Just stop. Yeah. So other illusions that are really cool. The best illusion I've seen was walking through a house type attraction, and so you walk up a ramp and you're obviously gaining some elevation, right? And the exact amount, it's not really noticeable. I would say maybe 3 feet. Let's say 3 feet off the ground. So you walk up, you turn 90 degrees. Now you're on like a catwalk sort of platform, and you're 3.5 feet off the ground. You're walking from one side of a room to the other, and it's a large room. And perpendicular to you, when you get to the center of the room, is what you see this like throne sort of chair, and there's fog at about the level of where your feet are. There's something sitting in the chair. All you see are these glowing eyes. And so you walk in, and the actor who's sitting in the chair with the glowing eyes starts his dialogue, Prince of the Underworld, blah, 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 whatever his shtick was. He then, after his little monologue, gets up and starts walking towards you. Now, he's walking across the fog, so I assume he's on a platform at about the same level that I'm on. When he gets to the end, about, 6 to 8 feet away from me, he starts to fall forward and he disappears into the fog. As he disappears into the fog, these other little demon guys jump up out of the fog, over the railing, onto the platform with you.
Oh my goodness, that would be.
It is the coolest thing.
Think of it as an actor. But think of it as like an actor, like in order to jump over the railing, like the platform probably isn't like that deep, but still, like that would take a lot. You're doing that about 300 times a night.
Yeah, and I don't know that they were doing it that often. And I'm not sure what the setup looked like for these guys to come up out of the fog. I'm not sure what the height difference was.
Right.
So it could have been as simple as, just stepping over something. But yeah.
By the end of the night, I would be just flipping over the railing, face planting. I'm done.
Yeah. But like it was super cool.
Yeah.
That was probably the best scene and effect in that haunt, for a lot of reasons. But oh my God, it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in a haunt. I have not seen anything that cool since. I've seen some neat effects here and there, some things that, the haunts will take a classic effect like the laser tunnel. So you're walking through, and this works like the laser fog or the fog swamp. And or the laser swamp. What were we calling it? Laser swamp? I don't know. Anyway, um,
Laser
yeah.
swamp.
So it works in a similar way. So you walk into a hallway, it's full of fog. There's a laser down at the end coming from the point at which the laser comes out. It goes out into like a cone sort of pattern. Outside of that beam is the actor, and then when you get to a certain point, the actor steps into the beam. You can now see them. It's a scare. So I've seen some variations on that were not too different from that, but yeah, nothing so
Yeah,
far that was like a completely original illusion like that.
one of the cooler variations that I seen last year was basically instead of having it come at you or it being like flat, at your feet or parallel to you, like you're in a swamp or water, it was essentially the walls along the side, like they were vertical. And I had an actor like pop out their hands out of the side of this, what I thought was a wall. I was pretty sure it was a wall, but it turns out it wasn't. It was just all lasers. And so there was an actor in full black all of a sudden popping out their hands that were like right next to me, towards me. And then,
That's pretty cool.
yeah, that was the coolest use of the laser effects that I seen. Mostly because it was so different. It was very unique. So
Yeah, that's neat.
thinking of illusions or the kind of illusions that I like or have seen. So and this kind of goes into like prop and set, so it kind of deviates from scares, but like being frostbitten or cold. Um, like last year we went through a freezer as patrons, and there were like scents piped in, and it specifically the temperature was slightly lowered. Um, it wasn't as enclosed. It was a could be an outdoor haunt, but they didn't enclose it, so it was like the natural October air that was like coming in. So it was a bit cooler than more the enclosed like indoor areas of that haunt, but it was a really realistic like freezer effect. And I've also been through one where they have like this Krampus scene, even though it's not a Christmas haunt at the time, it was the regular haunt that they had. But in the Krampus scene, they had the snow machine going on. So it wasn't actual snow, it was the artificial snow that you could have going on. But again, just piping in a lot of um, sounds, kind of like wind bustling through. It's really cool. And it kind of really does give you a perspective that transport you or move you into that environment. And
Right.
things start making sense. Like it makes sense of like, oh, of course this will happen in a freezer or an actor's doing, this thing. So the freezer that I talked about, a butcher came out. That's not a shocker. And then the other one with Krampus, it's the Abominable Snowman.
I've seen some really good abominable snowman or yeti sort of characters, and I don't see them very frequently, so when I do see them, I'm usually very favorable to those characters. But yeah, I
Right.
think yeah, I like that. Now, what about like smells? Like
Oh,
scents inside of haunts, because I'm sure that most people have experienced this, maybe without realizing it. Most of what I smell in a haunt is, I smell the musty sort of mildewy sort of smell because people leave things in haunts, and it snows up here, so we get cold and thawing seasons, and it just gets musty and kind of damp smelling. And fog. Oh my god, the smell of the fog. That's all I can ever smell.
right. So I've worked for, I think out of the 500 houses, three of them were really heavily, like they use scents in each room. I don't know, again, kind of like with your experience, I don't really know how much people walking through actually realize, but definitely as actors and on the back end, it's rough. Um, so one story that I have that's absolutely horrific was it was a boiler room and the actor that worked in the boiler room. So there's a scent made by a company that really are realistic scents. And the name of the scent was called Charred Corpse. So it's the exact thing of like what you're thinking of. It's like burnt hair, burnt skin, that gorgeous scent. Well, the scare
Yummy.
actor, yeah, the scare actor that was working in there used the whole entire bottle on
Oh
themselves.
god. Oh god.
So the haunt was reeking like charred corpse
Oh my
forever.
god.
Forever. I think it like
Ah.
saturated into the skin. Yeah, technically the actor had to do a costume change, but still smelled horrendous. Yeah, we definitely
I
learned the smell of charred corpse.
now the question is, how did they get that scent? How did they perfect that? Like, how many bodies do they have to burn to go, no, it needs more burning hair smell?
Right? I have no idea. But I can say, like, so I personally own one of the scents, and that's called, I think it's called like graveyard dirt, and it smells like raw, wet earth and very mossy, very earthy, very wet, like rain type of thing. Um, I also have another
So
one called,
so it smells like Scotch tastes then.
sure. I've
At least
never
the
had
Scotch
scotch, but
at least the
sure.
Scotch that I drink Lagavulin.
Okay.
Which, yeah, we're going to get into this now. So I drink expensive Scotch.
Okay.
And so where that's made, they use peat.
Okay.
When they do the smoking process, they use peat because it's everywhere in Scotland, or at least on the island of, I'm going to butcher the name of this, Islay. So yeah, it's everywhere, and it's a very earthy smell and very earthy taste, very peaty is how I would describe it. So what you're describing, I would imagine smells how Lagavulin tastes. Lagavulin isn't as strong as like Lafrague, which again Scotch drinkers will know is a very pungent Scotch.
Right.
Um, Yeah, sorry to go on the tangent. That was
It's
the first thing that popped into my mind. I'm like, ooh, really earthy. Yeah, I could go for some scotch.
yeah, it's I can't explain it other than like it smells like what you think it smells like. Like these are really realistic.
Yeah, I would expect that to smell very earthy.
Yeah, and they're strong. They are so strong. Like normally it's just like one spray and you're good. And yeah, this actor, whole bottle.
Oh, God.
Not like, oh my goodness, she put a lot of Axe on. It's whole bottle
Oh,
doused.
God.
So it was intense. And I'm pretty sure everyone that went through could not deny that smell. Like it was, you could smell it from any room.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, credit due to the actor who really got into character.
Right?
I mean, you told this guy you're going to play a burned corpse, and he's like, aye, aye. He executed. I'll give him that much.
Hold my gallon of water. I got this.
Yeah, hold my piss bucket.
Right? Anyway, it kind of fits. So, one of the scares that we mentioned earlier was the intimidation scare. So it's basically when you have this really huge actor that kind of works, we call them boomers sometime based off of a game, but it's where you have an actor that like takes up a whole room or whole space. And actually the side purpose of this is to break up conga lines. So, do you have any experience with that, Bryan?
So there was one guy who was in one of these roles when I worked at Frightmare Farms. His name is Sean, and he is just the sweetest guy you've ever met. But my God, is he gigantic? He's, if I recall correctly, he's a firefighter, a volunteer firefighter during the day. So, really nice guy. He'd really go out of his way to do anything for you. But he big and scary. um, and then they put him in these like platform boots, and so he's already like 6'5" or something, and they put him in these platform boots, and now he's like almost 7 feet tall. And they put him at the end of the hunt, which I didn't fully understand because, with these intimidation sort of roles, you want them somewhere in the middle so that they can break up these conga lines. They can kind of get space in between, and you can kind of reset for the second half of that show. But they had him right at the end as the big scare. And, that's... I'm trying to think of other times where I've seen this sort of... Yeah, and nothing really comes to mind. And I guess because it's not really a significant type of scare.
Yeah, I definitely seen it used. It's really okay. So I do have to say this: it's really hard to cast an intimidation scare. Like
It
that's
is.
just not your cast. That's
Yeah, no,
auditioning for the haunted house.
you need somebody huge to play
Yeah,
that part.
either that or another one that we always said is that we need somebody huge or has a really huge personality. Because you could have a pretty tiny person as long as they could fill up a room, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I've seen tiny girls fit this role. Like I've casted tiny girls that fit this role. So it does take a certain type of personality and it is a really hard role to fit. Like it's really hard to find actors that fit into this, which I think plays into the whole thing of you not really coming across them that often. I particularly look for them because I kind of like them. They tend to be really interesting. You have more face time with them. They're kind of like queue line actors again, that you have a lot of face time with. Again, because they're trying to break up lines or, hold you in place for whatever reason. Most of the time, honestly, from an actor perspective, it's because there's a group in front of you that's really slow and they don't
Yeah.
want you to run into them.
To be fair, I am the really I'm weird when I go into haunted houses. Sometimes I'm really slow, and I'm that group that they're trying to keep you from running into. But other times, like if I'm in a haunt that I've seen 100 times before, I kind of just cruise through kind of quick, and it's so frustrating for me
I want to
because in a new haunt, I want to slow down, I want to stop, I want to look at things and ogle them and go, oh, look at that, it's so cool. But like other times it's just like, yeah, whatever, this sucks.
I
Like
want
just
to say that I'm jaunty through the haunted house. I don't run. I do try to take in as much as possible, especially as like a reviewer, but also there is that like really good thing of like, well, I don't want to run into the people ahead of me. I don't want the other people behind me to catch up, so I try to be jaunty. Like
yeah.
just fast enough.
Yeah, but the other problem too is like you could be moving through at a fairly quick pace, which I think I do more often than not, and not intentionally. But it never fails that there's a group behind me, and it's like either 13-year-old boys or 16-year-old girls, and they are just booking it,
Specifically
and
those
they're nipping at
ages.
your heels. Yeah, they're like it's always those two groups of people. It's always like middle school boys and high school girls.
Gotcha.
They're always nipping at my heels because they are terrified. And then it's like, okay, fine, go, run, get ahead of me. I don't care. Like I'm gonna go at my pace, but
I don't really have that much problem as like a patron kind of going through. There is definitely people that are runners. Sometimes, a lot of times, like it's kind of actor driven because the idea of like an actor is to like push forward. And so if you could particularly scare the right group and you could scare the right group going forward, like that's like the nice sweet spot, right? You
yeah,
don't really want, again, I just talked about intimidation scares of like how you hold the uh customers or the patrons that are going through like in a room. Like as a normal actor with jump scares or Jack and Jill scares, mannequin scares, whatever, like the main goal is to scare forward, like constantly push forward and get people running out of your room. So it
Yeah.
kind of makes sense, like why you do have runners that are right behind you and meet up with your group. Um, if that's like kind of the philosophy of like every single haunted house that you go through, yeah, I mean it makes sense like why it happens. I haven't had them where or any situation where it was particularly rude. But yeah, I've definitely been dragged through a haunted house accidentally. Like it would be like a group and they're like, "You're a part of our group now too." Like, no.
That
I-
happened my first year reviewing, actually. We had encountered, I think it was like a mother and a daughter, and they were both like just totally freaked out, and they just kind of like hid within us because three of us who are completely jaded, we've seen everything, and they were just like, we're a part of your group now. We're like, oh no, you're not.
right? You won't be scared going through with us. It sounds horrible, but yeah, it's really hard to scare other hunters and it's hard to scare like reviewers. And it's not that we never get scared, it's just hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult, Like I said, we're kind of jaded. We've seen everything. We know what to expect and where. So it's, I don't know. It takes a really special customized sort of scare to really get a reviewer or a haunter, especially especially somebody who's currently working in the industry. Forget it. You're not gonna really get them.
Right.
But that being said, I've seen some really cool things that didn't scare me, but did make me stop and go, can you do that again? I want to see that happen. I want to see it happen one more time because it was that cool. So I think the last type of scare that most people are going to see, well, so really there's two, but so animatronics and props can be put into all of these other types of scares, right? So animatronics, props, that sort of thing can all be incorporated. Like we were talking about with the mannequins, you can do that with animatronics. The white rabbit can be done with an animatronic. Any of the other ones,
The jump scare.
totally doable with all with animatronics. So the last unique type is going to be a gross out scare. And so this is going to be something where you were telling me a story about how you filled your face with creamed corn and then you'd vomit it out. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
no, thank you.
So the gross out scare was my favorite scare as an actor. So yeah, it was creamed corn, which is not really great. Like throughout a whole entire night. So you're talking about 5 hours of cream corn.
I was gonna say that can't be good for your skin.
I don't know. Like you could argue that it's moisturizing, like it coming out and like I did a lot. Like I put like my hand and my fingers in my mouth to like help push cream corn back out. I would just have my hand covered in cream corn and be like wiping it in my hair, my face, and all my clothes. Um, how the night would normally end is that it just my face, my hair, my clothes would all be covered. I'm pretty sure the costumer loved me.
Oh,
Right?
no.
Wardrobe was my friend.
I'm sure you're using that term friend very lightly here.
Yeah, I had to like I actually had to take home my own costume and wash it every night because
Yeah.
day old cream corn also is like no bueno.
No. No. So some other examples of this might be, so like fake vomit, that sort of thing. Fake poop is a really popular one. I think that, some people are,
Mhm.
you're going to be more likely to encounter the fake poop one. And one actor that comes to mind is at Demon Acres, there is Jojo the Clown, and he's, the last couple of times I've gone, he's been in this sort of bathroom scene. And the first time I went, he had what he called to be a poopsicle. And I think what it was like melting chocolate ice cream or maybe like frozen yogurt, that sort of thing. He had it inside of an upturned toilet plunger and he would like lick on it and stuff and he'd eat it. And so like, it was obviously food because he was eating it all night. But like, yeah, it totally looked like poop. He offered me some and when it got close to me, it smelled like chocolate. So I think it was ice cream of some sort. And then the
Should have
last
just
time it
went
went,
for it. Just go for
I
it. Go for the gross
well,
out. Embrace it.
yeah, and then the last time that he went, so there's like a toilet in the scene because it's a bathroom, and he had something in the toilet and he was like taking it out with like a ladle and like sipping on it and stuff, and he called it poo stew.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was. I assume it was probably just water, or something in there. But like that one was a little more gross, right?
Right. I think it's more gross when they actually like it is some type of food. There's this whole like level of like, is it actually really sanitary for the actor to be messing with food so long?
Yeah,
Right?
and that's a health department question.
Right?
I think the line gets drawn at like if the actor is bringing their own food and they set it up and everything. I think that's kind of where the haunt says, okay, this is your thing then.
Right.
Because the haunt isn't saying, oh, you should do this or you shouldn't do that or whatever. It's the actor saying like, I'm going to bring this food. I'm going to eat this food.
Exactly. And that was like my experience too, is that gross out again is my kind of favorite thing to act out because you don't actually really have to act all that much. You just have to be disgusting, eating disgusting food almost. Oatmeal is great. Anyway,
Oh yeah.
I'm distracted slightly, but yeah, it was like my idea, to bring oatmeal or to bring canned corn or whatever and like eat it, kind of like through it, but just being absolutely messy and sloppy and stuff with it. It wasn't really like, oh, you're this character and obviously this is what this character does. So I think that freedom was pretty nice.
Oh, sure, yeah. So one of the famous gross out scares, I guess, in movie history is in The Exorcist.
Mhm.
The scene with the vomit, the spinning head and the vomit, that was actually split pea soup.
Yep.
That's the one that always comes to mind when somebody talks about this sort of scare, this sort of effect is the split pea soup in The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite scenes in a horror movie. I don't care how cheesy it is. I love it.
It's great. Especially that era. Again, we're going on a lot of tangents, but that era did a lot of practical effects. So there was a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
like food being used for gross outs, for guts, and yeah,
Oh, for
it was
sure,
a
yeah.
fun era, I think, of film.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. They just didn't really have the technology to, to do the computerized digital effects there. So, they had to come up with some way to make that effect happen in the scene and capture it with the camera.
Right.
And I think it led to a lot more creativity, for filmmakers and, just more interesting scenes in general. But that's, those days are long gone. I don't know. There's some movies that have done it recently, or I guess more modernly. Like Paranormal Activity. The first two, I think, used all practical effects.
Right.
Which I love it. I think it's cool. Anybody could go in a computer and animate something. It takes a whole level of engineering to be like, how do we make cabinet doors slam open?
Yeah. Right.
So, but unfortunately, that is all we have time for this week.
Tangents!
I know, we're over on time. But yeah, well, within editing, it's going to come down to about an hour. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and follow us on all of the platforms wherever podcasts are sold. Are podcasts sold? I don't know. Every time somebody says, like, wherever you get your podcasts, I always think, like, wherever podcasts are sold. I don't know. I'm going on a tangent again. Anyway, hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, do all the fun social stuff. Share this with your friends. If they don't know who we are the Scare Factor. I have been Bryan.
And I'm Tiffany.
And we'll see you next week.